The road was a black scar cutting through the vast emptiness of the night, and the trucker, hardened by years of travel, felt the weight of sleep circling him like a silent predator. Then he saw him. An old man standing by the roadside, his thumb raised in a mute request for a ride. The trucker hesitated. He had heard too many stories about strangers on the road. But loneliness and the biting wind convinced him otherwise. The old man climbed into the cab without a word, only nodding with an empty gaze, deep, hollow, like a black hole in the middle of his face. The journey continued in silence, the rumble of the engine filling the void between them. The highway lights stretched and vanished in the rearview mirror, but something began to gnaw at the trucker's nerves. The scenery seemed to repeat itself, like they were trapped in a loop. He furrowed his brow, glancing at the old man from the corner of his eye. Was exhaustion playing tricks on him? But the discomfort grew like a shadow, slithering through the air. Then he saw it. The sign. The same sign marking the spot where he had picked up the man just minutes ago. A cold shiver ran down his spine, as icy as steel in winter. He tried to laugh off the coincidence, but his throat was dry. Fear that unwelcome visitor had climbed into the passenger seat. He slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the asphalt, and turned to confront the stranger. But the seat was empty. Only silence filled the space where, seconds ago, a man of flesh and blood had been sitting. Terror rooted itself deep inside him, his hands trembling on the wheel. Before he could react, a headlight crossed his rearview mirror. Another trucker pulled up beside him, face serious. He rolled down his window and said in a grave tone, "You picked him up, didn't you? We all have. But he died on this road years ago." The trucker felt his stomach drop. If that was true, then who, or what, had been sitting beside him just moments ago? A cold sweat trickled down the back of his neck, but he forced himself to look at the passenger seat again. The air inside the cab was thick, heavy, as if something unseen still lingered there. He tried to take a deep breath to steady himself. "It's just exhaustion," he muttered, ignoring the goosebumps creeping up his arms. But then something made his heart nearly stop. The rearview mirror. In the reflection, the old man was there. Not sitting, but standing right behind his shoulder, so close that the trucker could feel a freezing breath brushing against his skin. A scream lodged in his throat. He slammed his foot on the gas, gripping the wheel with sweaty hands, his eyes locked on the road ahead. But nothing changed. The same curve, the same gnarled tree by the roadside, the same sign that should have been far behind by now. It was like driving in circles inside a nightmare. The radio crackled, a sinister static filling the cab. Amidst the noise, a hoarse voice whispered his name. He tried to turn it off, but the button wouldn't budge. His fingers trembled. Fear was no longer just an unease, it was a pulsating horror, a living, suffocating presence. Then he realized he was no longer alone. The shadow in the passenger seat had returned, but now the old man was smiling. A smile that was all wrong, too wide, too unnatural, as if his skin might tear apart at any moment. The trucker tried to scream, but no sound came out. The old man raised a hand and pointed out the window. And then, as if reality had struck him with a hammer, he saw it. The crash site. His truck, overturned by the side of the road, glass shattered, blood staining the asphalt. And inside the mangled cab, himself. The trucker felt the world tilt. His mind refused to accept what he was seeing. He was here, alive. He could feel the steering wheel beneath his hands, the weight of his body, the air in his lungs. But if that was true, how could he be looking at himself dead? The old man beside him simply watched, as if amused by his realization. A deafening horn snapped him out of his trance. Another trucker had pulled up beside him, his face shadowed with something that looked like pity. He staggered out of his cab, heart hammering. "You picked him up, didn't you?" The man's voice was heavy, burdened. "We all have. But no one gets past this curve without seeing the truth." The trucker turned back to the wreck, his knees weakening. It was a warning. Something, or someone, wanted him to understand. The radio in his truck switched on by itself, static buzzing in the air. Through the noise, a familiar voice whispered, "It's time to move on." The trucker froze. The voice was his own. He wanted to deny it, to run, but he knew it was useless. The road led nowhere. Time no longer moved for him. Terror gripped his throat like invisible hands. If this was all real, then how long had he been driving with no destination? He tried to flee, but his feet felt like they were sinking into the pavement, as if the very road was holding him in place. The other trucker, the one who had warned him, simply shook his head in sorrow. "No one escapes," he murmured, climbing back into his truck and vanishing into the night. The trucker's mind spiraled in desperation. He refused to accept the impossible. But the old man, always there, silent, only smiled again, that wrong, wide, bone-chilling smile. The wind howled, the trees whispered secrets too dark to hear. Terror was now a living thing, as if the road itself was breathing, waiting. He climbed back into his cab, moving on instinct alone. There was nowhere else to go. The engine roared to life on its own. The radio crackled. The reflection in the mirror showed the old man sitting beside him once more. "Now you understand," the voice echoed, quiet yet resounding through every inch of the truck. The truth hit him like a sledgehammer. He would never leave. The road was his prison, his personal hell. He was doomed to pick up hitchhikers like himself, travelers trapped in a fate no one could explain. The truck moved forward, though he hadn't touched the gas. The landscape repeated itself like a broken record. In the distance, headlights approached. By the roadside, a lone traveler raised a thumb, asking for a ride. And the trucker knew, without needing to ask, that soon he would be the one warning another just like him. The cycle would never end. After all, how many ghosts can a road carry before no one dares to travel it anymore? The road remained unmoving, indifferent. By day, cars rushed past, distracted drivers living their lives, never noticing the secrets the asphalt held. But at night it was different. That was when lonely truckers felt an unshakable chill, when headlights caught shadows that shouldn't be there, when a silent man appeared by the roadside asking for a ride, and when someone stopped, well, the cycle began again. What if it were you? Imagine driving down a deserted highway, hearing only the hum of the engine and the wind cutting through the silence. You see a figure in the darkness, feeling an inexplicable urge to help. But what if, when you glance in the rearview mirror, you realize you've passed him before? And what if, upon reaching a curve, you find a wrecked truck, identical to yours? The truth? Maybe you've already given a ghost a ride without knowing. Or worse, maybe you're the one trapped in this endless loop. Now tell me, has anything strange ever happened to you on the road? Ever felt déjà vu, seen a shadow disappear when you looked again? If so, maybe you've already brushed against the world that exists between the living and the dead. Share your story in the comments. And if you want to hear more tales like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. After all, some stories never end.